This case is one of the most gruesome I've heard, and not for the faint-hearted. 18th of December 1994, Alison Botha drove back to her apartment in Port Elizabeth, South Africa on that fateful night. Returning at around 3 AM, Alison returned from a day at the beach and a night at her apartment with a friend. She had kindly taken the time to drive her friend home prior to returning, before trying to park close to her home, looking for a go-to spot but failing, so she had to look further. She managed to swing her car into a spot, and as she turned to reach for her laundry in the back seat, she felt a fresh gust of warm air pass by her face. A knife was pressed to her throat before she could even understand the dire situation that she was in. The assailant with the knife ordered her to move to another seat, and now he entered, trapping her in. Frans Dutoit told her that she'd be safe if she did what he demanded. Frans now drove a short distance with Alison at his mercy before pulling up. The rear door sprung open before another villainous-looking man sat himself in the back seat. The one now driving the car, he wore a fake mask of ordinary calm. The one in the back, he just glared at her, waiting for her to make one wrong move. This man, he had evil in his eyes. As they took off in the car, Alison was unknowingly held captive by two vile men that dabbled in Satanism, and they were prepared to go to the darkest depths that evil had to offer. They headed to the outskirts of the city, finding a remote location where there'd be no witnesses. The pair, they'd break the silence, and they'd tell Alison about the sick plans they had in store for her, asking if she would resist them. She told them no, and they threw her onto the ground on a pile of debris, and Frans brutally When he was done, he threw her to Theuns Kruger, his 19-year-old accomplice, who too Alison Botha. Frans Dutoit and Theuns Kruger, they were polar opposites in lifestyle and appearance. Frans looked quite ordinary, and he concealed his true self, his true identity, with 2 children and a wife. Kruger, he looked the part of an evil scumbag. He grew up in an abusive home and his father was a career criminal, but both shared a depraved connection. These are 2 of the most evil human beings I've ever heard of. Sadly, they weren't done with Alison. Kruger bared down on the neck of Alison after he was done assaulting her, squeezing tighter in an attempt to end her life. The duo wasn't going to leave her alive. In result of the strangulation, Alison to herself. The pair, even though enjoying themselves, they became frustrated that Alison wouldn't die. She was in and out of consciousness, so they pulled a knife out instead. As the injured Alison laid defeated and barely awake, they plunged a knife 37 times into her abdomen. One after another, the knife would tear into her skin. She lay there, obviously covered in blood and degraded to the extreme. Now her organs were visible. She'd been butchered beyond belief, but still wasn't over. The pair of fiends openly chatted away before seeing Alison's leg twitch. An arm would repeatedly pass Alison's face as her attackers, they stabbed her 17 times in the neck. 17. Alison Botha's body would be left callously by the pair as they walked away chatting as if this was another normal night's work, taking her car as their getaway vehicle. In the most unlikely event, something that really shouldn't be possible, after 54 stab wounds, Alison lay there, clinging to a thread of life. She managed to scrawl 2 names into the dirt beside her, Frans and Theuns. She had heard them using their names when they assumed she was dead. Finally, a message, "I love Mum." Somehow, Alison had managed to survive this sheer brutal act. She crawled with the last ounces of her strength and somehow managed to get to her feet. Alison had managed to recover the denim shirt that had been ripped off of her, and with this she crudely tried to keep her intestines in as she tied it around herself, wrapping it tightly around her guts. Headlights were passing by through the bushes, showing the direction that she should head for. She had fallen multiple times but still managed to keep getting up. She made it to the road before collapsing in the centre. A car would approach and slow down, beaming their headlights upon Alison before hastily speeding up, leaving her to her fate. Really don't understand those sort of people that could do this. Another vehicle followed with a group of friends from Johannesburg, one being Tyan Ellard, a veterinary student. They brought the car to a screeching halt. Jumping out, the group ran to the naked and Alison Botha. Tyan used his vet training to try and aid her. He set to work on trying to cover up the exposed thyroid. The lacerations were that deep into her neck, she was actually close to decapitation. It's unbelievable that she had actually gotten this far. Tyan was holding her hand, trying to keep her conscious, asking her questions. Should squeeze gently for yes once or twice for no. It took an agonising 45 minutes for the paramedics to arrive, much longer than it should have taken. The severity of this attack was immediately apparent. Alison Botha still remained alive all the way to the hospital. 3 hours she was under the surgeon's knife and breathing tubes were inserted into her throat. Now, here is a miraculous part of this true crime. Despite 50 plus stab wounds, none of these had hit her vital organs, even with her intestines trying to almost spill out. Because she had actually emptied her bowels during the attack, this saved her from sepsis. That almost would have certainly killed her. Not a single one of the puncture wounds or lacerations that she received, even though they were smothered in dirt, became infected. And most notably, she survived. Alison remembered the whole ordeal. Talking about the attack, she stated, "His movements were making a sound. A wet sound. It was the sound of my flesh being slashed open. He was cutting my throat with a knife." Then, when they were done with her, she heard them use their real names, before saying, "Do you think she's dead?" with a response of, "No one can survive that." During her horrific yet brutal effort at survival, she noticed her head fall back and her vision go blurry. This was because she had nearly been decapitated. She had to hold her head in place with one hand, whilst holding her intestines in with another. What a traumatising event for this poor woman. She'd only written the names of her attackers in the dirt because she didn't believe she could survive this. Despite her horrific injuries, Alison was able to identify Franz and Theuns from a lineup. The pair had tried to alter their appearance. Franz Dutoit and Theuns Kruger were apprehended the next day. Franz, in his interview, thought that this was in relation to Alison's murder, so you can imagine his face when finding out that she was very much still alive. He promptly confessed and handed over a blood-stained ring of hers. Franz told the police that he was possessed by a demon and they needed an exorcism, which was actually granted. Kruger, however, didn't blame a demon for what he'd done. He knew that he was just evil and enjoyed his actions. This case will keep on infuriating you the more you hear. June the 12th, 1995, the trial began. Alison, despite everything, had the bravery to testify against them, her attackers. 3 other women came forward to testify too. A student that had been by Franz Dutoit. Secondly, a pregnant woman that had been despicably to by the pair. Just weeks before their sadistic acts upon Alison Botha, they threatened the pregnant woman with her life if she were to go to the police. Despite this, she did so immediately. Shockingly, after their arrest on this charge, both men were released. An absolute failure by the police. Quite a prominent detail to this case is that Franz's father was actually a police officer at the time. Speculation goes around suggesting that perhaps this is the reason as to why he kept getting away with his sick crimes. What do you think? The third woman nearly suffered the same fate as Alison, as she pulled up with her car and the pair tried to jump in before she locked the door, and then instinctively sped off. After seeing the case on the TV of Alison Botha, she saw that it was the 2 men that had tried to attack her, and then stepped forward. 7th of August 1995. The judge brought the gavel down hard on these 2 sick monsters. They were found guilty of all charges. Franz Dutoit received 3 life sentences. Theuns Kruger received 1 life sentence plus 25 years. Their story isn't quite over yet. Alison spiraled into a deep depression, understandably. Thankful she survived, yet physically and mentally scarred from these insane acts of violence. She reconnected with a friend who too had some problems. They both found love through this and eventually married in February 1997 before having 2 sons. Alison went on to write her own book about her experiences, and then a movie would in fact be made based around her story. A laughable yet rage-inducing scenario occurred. Franz Dutoit, whilst behind bars, reached out to the film crew and offered his side of the story. But in return, he wanted a signed letter of forgiveness from Alison and a percentage of the profits, as he claimed there'd be no crime or story without him. Shocking how a monster like this could somehow sink even lower. Thankfully, they rejected him. However, the most shocking part of this is these 2 vile creatures were released on parole in July 2023. They walk among us again. Click here for the case chosen just for you. Drop your thoughts, subscribe for more true crime. Likes make me work harder.